you so much. So last but not least, the final presentation for the symposium. Usually it's me or someone like me that gets put in this spot, Andrew. Best till last, let's say that. Andrew Smith is our last presenter, and Andrew currently works as a dairy systems analyst for Australian Fresh Milk Holdings, having previously held the role of dairy manager at Moxie Farms, Goolagong, after graduating from Charles Sturt University in 2018 with a Bachelor of Veterinary Science. Andrew has a strong passion for the profitability, sustainability and growth of the dairy business. Every time I talk to him, that is definitely the case. And growing up in a family dairy business and dedicating his tertiary education to building a strong grounding in dairy production, including time spent studying in both New Zealand and the USA. Andrew is here in the 2020 DRF Symposium to talk to us all about innovative dairy systems. So Andrew, if you could share your screen, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm assuming everyone can see this now. Hold on, I was flicking through my slides as Nick spoke to get some alignment. Thanks, Cameron. Look, I was sitting talking with my partner Emma last night about what I would say as Cameron flicked over to me, and she said, well, what's your elevator pitch? And I said, what do you mean an elevator pitch? I've never heard of one, but apparently it's what you say if you hop in an elevator with someone you don't know. And Cameron, if you could forward that back to me, it's probably what I'd use. So good morning, everyone. Here to wrap things up at the 2020 DRF Symposium. I think I've been coming to the symposium for now, the better part of 10 years. And, you know, it's an honour to be back here speaking today. I'm a dairy farmer. That's certainly how I identify. I'm also a vet, and I've done some postgrad work in ag commerce. Today, I'm fortunate enough to be involved in 2 agricultural businesses, both dairy, that I consider to be exciting and innovative places to work. I'm an analyst for Australian Fresh Milk Holdings. Having previously managed the dairy out at Goolagong, that some of you would have had the good fortune of coming to visit and also play along from the sidelines in my parents' dairy business, Mile River Pastoral Company. Look, I live and breathe dairy farming, as Cameron said. It continues to excite me. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with Neil Gaiman, but he once said he waits most days for someone with a clipboard and wearing a suit to knock on the door and say, sorry, mate, party's over, time to get a real job. And certainly that's how I feel. Look, my game plan today is to briefly touch on the concept of innovation. I want to explore some of the themes that I think will influence dairy businesses of the future, and then share my experience at AFMH as well as part of the Mile River Pastoral Company. On to the next slide. So I guess we ask ourselves, what is innovation? To me, it's one of these buzzwords. Everyone thinks it's important, but in my experience so far, I find it pretty hard to get agreement on what we think it is. Tell you what, for what it's worth, if you go to Google, it's probably not going to make things any simpler. You can spend a lot of time trying to work out what innovation means, scroll through a few thousand definitions and find what suits you. So look, for me, the definition that resonated was this notion of executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value both for your business and ultimately for the consumer that you're serving. I think though, what does this mean in practice? Look, this is anything that we do day to day, week to week, year on year, that looks at improving the position or the performance of your business. So look, there's not much that you do that couldn't be called innovation if you wanted to. This picture sums it up pretty nicely to me. I think it encapsulates everything that we consider innovation, and I really like the notion of doing more with the same resources. So, you know, if you know someone who gets described as the bloke that things turn to gold when he touches them, he's who you need to be talking to about innovation. Right, dairy businesses and themes that I think will affect the future of where we take them. This is a passion of mine. I'll preface it by saying I think trying to predict the future is a damn foolish exercise. we've just got to prepare for it and know what will influence the future. And I think for dairy businesses, and it was refreshing to hear Justin speak yesterday on the key drivers of his business. Largely these things aren't changing, but I think there are some themes which continue and will continue to influence us. Evidence-based agriculture is something that certainly I think is continuing to grow. Knowing your trade, knowing the science behind what you do and why you do it, and engaging in advancing your understanding of the science and any emerging themes. I thought we had some great presentations this morning, and I'll touch on topics for future innovation at the end, but many of those were covered. Scale and professionalism, this isn't trivial. This continues to happen. Every report that's been produced continues to tell us that average farm size increases. And I don't think there's many dairy farmers in the room that would say that the complexity and the professionalism that they have to operate their businesses with has gone backwards. So, that's a no-brainer. I've put this in bold: the ability to produce to market specification at low cost. For me, this is what will see our businesses make it to the future. The other point I want to make about this is that we spend a lot of time debating the need to produce at low cost. I don't think it's a relevant debate. And my point is, if you do it and the price goes up, you end up rich anyway. So look, it's a safe bet. Continue to challenge the way that the costs involved in producing your product and ways to create more with the same amount. Sustainability and the way that we handle our land, our water, our carbon and our energy will be an important, and already is an important theme in how we manage our dairy businesses. I think a lot of this ties into evidence-based agriculture, but ultimately we must seek to do better every time that we approach the use of natural resources. Seems fitting that we had a session on society yesterday, but for me, our ethical alignment with our consumers continues to be a theme that will affect us. Look, don't take me wrong here. I'm not talking about extremists, but certainly we need to operate our business in a way that the consumers are comfortable with. And I think largely the rule book's not written here, so there's a great opportunity for us to be on the front foot and decide how this is done. The quote down the bottom I've stolen from a bloke called Jeff Daniel. He spoke at a Grow Ag forum a couple of years ago now, and was asked to talk about who'd own the farms of the future. And he said, I think it's pretty bloody simple. The farms of the future will be owned by the people that do it right today. And I think that's as much empowerment as any of us need. Look, I want to dive straight in. 20 minutes isn't long to run one of these things, so I'm going to dive straight into Australian Fresh Milk Holdings. Some of you would be familiar with that name. Others would know Moxie Farms, which is probably, best described as the handle of what is now one of our sites and one of the forming businesses that made the overarching group of AFMH. Look, to give some context, this is a partnership between the Moxie family, the Perich Group, Freedom Foods, and the New Hope Group, and today we're responsible for over 10,000 milk cows and 300 plus people across our sites. To give you guys a bit of insight into the way we run our business, I spoke with my boss Quentin last night about this and raved about some of the presentations yesterday, and I said, look, largely I'm speaking about things that are outside the scope of what we do as dairy farmers most day, but the core remains the same, and we need to continue to do the building blocks correctly, and certainly that the same fundamentals of everyone's business remain important to us. The aim, of AFMH today is to develop a world-class dairy farm focused on sustainable production of high-quality fresh milk. We're market-focused, which is reflected by the second part, which involves supporting the manufacture and marketing of premium value-added dairy products. With scale comes an opportunity to focus on the market and produce specifically to the specification and the arrangements required by the market. And so that's something we've been able to leverage as we've grown. Here is what we refer to as the 4 pillars of our business. As the business increases in complexity and continues to grow, we need a lens to focus on what's important and what really holds our business up. And you know, absolutely, that's our people, our cows, our farm, and our opportunity in the market. And you know, I challenge you guys out there day to day that are operating, you know, innovative and successful dairy businesses to consider, you know, the key pillars of your business and how that might relate. So look, to give a bit of an overview of what we do today, we've got 3 farming sites, the original Moxie Farms in central west of New South Wales, right in the heart of the Lachlan Valley, ranging, you know, through from Cowra to Forbes on different farming blocks there. We acquired Kambuna Farms in early 2019 in the Goulburn Valley, just outside of Shepparton, where we're milking today. And more recently acquired Turrumbry Farms west of Echuca, also in the Goulburn Valley, which is in development to be a young stock facility and cropping farm to supply the other sites. So look, that's briefly, you know, where we are. We've also got a corporate office in Orange, which houses, you know, our corporate services team, HR, finance, commodities, you know, the likes. So look, I think when we talk about innovation, there's 2 types of innovation I really want to focus on here. One is process, but the other is business structure innovation. When we look across our business structure, it is fairly different to what's typical in the marketplace. We're vertically integrated, as the illustration here describes. We own our land and water largely. We're invested in our own farming, producing the majority of forage ourselves. Look, that's obviously got its advantages. It removes an element of market risk. It allows us to produce the crops that we want to produce, and to the quality that we require. It removes the notion of transport costs largely, and it also lets us own the margins in that part of the game. Herd health and nutrition, you know, this is central to what we do, and certainly some of the conversations yesterday around intensive farming hinted on this, and it becomes a larger part of what we do. We've got an ever-growing veterinary team. I think across the sites now, we're certainly north of 5 vets, and I think we're closer to 10 qualified vets involved in the business. Look, along with a number of other highly skilled and also educated team members there, we really are growing a pretty powerful team in that space. Our dairy operations are probably the obvious one. You know, we're milking across 3 parlours now, soon to be 5 parlours. We milk 24 hours a day, 3 times daily per cow. More recently, we've taken a foray into waste to energy technologies. I'll speak about that shortly, but that has been a new opportunity for our business, and I think it's an exciting one. I won't be sharing the numbers, unfortunately, in the details that Nick has, but certainly for our business case, it's compelling. We undertake logistics, getting our milk to market daily, and in more recent times, we've explored some opportunities in sales and marketing. I think the other key themes here of our business structure and the model that we take is around scale and productivity. This is a system that lends itself to scale. We're absolutely focused on productivity at the per cow level. You know, as is no surprise, highly invested on a per cow basis with facilities and infrastructure, and optimizing production is the way that you make that work. A key focus is the ability to meet market specification. You know, one of the features of this style of business that often gets overlooked is our ability to predict milk production and really control the quality and the specification of that milk, which has its upsides when you look at the market. A couple of last points here. Investment in people is and is becoming an even bigger focus of our business. As the business continues to grow, it's larger than any one person can control, and it really links into this notion of managing the detail. Scale does not trump detail, never will. We've got to do the same things right day to day that any farmer has to ensure their success. You know, we need people in every department that share the passion that we have for what we do. So, look, I think moving through now to our production system, you know, I'm excited by the opportunity to talk to a few dairy farmers today, And while I probably won't get a chance to get into the detail I love to discuss, please feel free to pick up the phone. But these are some of the key themes that I thought would be worth talking about. A model obviously revolves around productivity at the cow level. We're dialed into this. Our managers track it relentlessly. We report on it daily and weekly, and obviously year on year at the corporate level. In more recent times, and it speaks to this idea of technology, but we're certainly engaging in more sensor use, both in understanding real time and some retrospective stuff. I think cow comfort is worth talking about here. The picture on the right here is a picture of one of our tunnel barns at Moxie Farm, Goolagong. This is a barn which, for all intents and purposes, I can control from my iPhone, or Nathan and Hannah, the current managers at Goolagong, can control from their iPhone. Look, we have control over the fans, the soakers, the lighting, and ventilation speed ultimately the whole way through this barn. We get alerted to faults, and we've got real-time telemetry out of this barn in terms of wind speed, temperature, and humidity. So what that does allow us to do is identify trends, identify opportunities or weaknesses that in how we deal with the environment. But certainly in terms of providing an environment for cows to succeed in, that's what we're bought into, and that's what this technology allows us to do. Feeding is probably the other part of productivity. You've got a fence with a fairly large loam tracking down there, and it'd be remiss not to touch on this. But look, we forage test weekly. We're on a nutrition call with our group out of the US weekly, reviewing production and performance of the herd. We update rations to reflect this, and certainly I think we hold ourselves up to the Bunsen burner on a daily, if not weekly basis in terms of really getting this right, both for cow performance and cow health. Roll into parlour utilisation, as spoken to, we operate 24 hours a day, and really this is about matching the facilities and the cows around it to the capacity of the parlour. Your parlour is one of your largest assets, and our model is really revolving around optimising asset utilisation. We have technology in those parlours, probably don't have the opportunity to go right into depth, and I'm mindful of time here as we roll through, but certainly we're metering milk. We've got some further intelligence in there. Integration of technology quickly. Look, we have software across our parlours, our feeding, our herd, and our animal sensors now, as well as ultimately our housing. The way we integrate this and create intelligence on the back of it is something that we're focusing on pretty strongly at the moment. I think there'll be a lot of opportunity on the back of that, and certainly in getting insight looking forward rather than more data looking backwards. Finally, recycling. There's truly no waste products. We're about to touch on the methane digester, or biodigester, if you will. But ultimately, the sand for bedding is recycled. Manure ends up back on paddocks, and liquid comes back through the barns as flushes. So we're very much focused on managing our waste stream and creating opportunity from those. Let's touch briefly on the biodigester, a couple of pictures on the right, but this is a waste to energy technology similar to that described by Cameron in his, sorry, not by Cameron, by Nick in his previous presentation. Probably a fairly different scale, but nonetheless a similar technology. Ultimately, we're capturing all of the effluent out of our barns and our parlours, putting it through this methane digester where it heats up and anaerobically digests, creating biogas which runs through 2 gensets to produce electricity for us. It's a 3 megawatt system, fairly large, and in comparison to some of those numbers we've just worked through. But the 3 key challenges that this addresses for us is it allows us to create green energy, displacing thousands of tonnes of carbon which would have otherwise been used to power our site. The deficit, or the excess goes back to the grid and powers our surrounding communities. It helps us with nutrient recovery. Certainly the waste product, or the exit stream of this is a product that captures a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen. and ends up back on our paddocks pre-planting. It also allows us to greatly control our odour reduction. You know, the waste product is ultimately broken down in a closed environment, and that is what is turned into energy. Love to talk about it more, and please call me if you're interested. On to the second business, and very mindful of time here. My River Pastoral Company is owned by my family. It's on the mid-north coast, just north of Newcastle, at Biodigester. Has been for just over 50 years now. Look, the context here very briefly is that we were very happily milking 200 cows and did so for a couple of decades. We recognised that if we wanted to continue being dairy farmers and ultimately continuing this path, we needed a strategy for growth. The picture on the left is the management team at the moment. This is my mum, my dad as well. Look, my mum's siblings and sister-in-law and my grandmother. This is the team basically at the coalface with the assistance of our staff. And you know, as we look through these themes and our strategy for growth, recognising that we have a maturing management team is one of those. I think what we looked to do, guys, was leverage our existing resources. We had a large area that was underproductive, used for beef cows and the like. We wanted to optimise productivity across the whole of farm, and in realising that we needed to invest in some infrastructure to do that, we wanted to create a working asset that remained relevant throughout its lifespan. You know, we look at these sort of assets as a 15-year minimum arrangement, and certainly we didn't want something that was going to be out of date at that time. Look, the decision was made. The picture at the bottom is how we've transformed what was previously pretty underproductive land. You know, to have a pun, I'd say it was at 60% of capacity. We installed an automatic milking system, 3D Laval VMS 300 units. Don't have time to work through all of the numbers, much to my dismay, but this has allowed us to ultimately, will allow us to double our productivity with marginal increases in labour requirements. And it's a strategy which allows us to play to our skills. Look, we're not in the game of managing large teams of staff. We're also not seasoned conservers of forage. So, you know, our game is grass, milk from grass, and this system allows us to do that just across a bigger site now. So that in essence is the production system. To touch on the energy solution, look, this was a greenfield project, and that certainly has impacted the feasibility. So I want to state that out front. We were faced with the decision of going down a conventional path and installing power lines. Ultimately, look, there was a large capital cost due to the nature of that project. It encouraged us to look at solar, and the numbers on the right are an annualised comparison of what we're dealing with there. Ultimately, that solution looks like an off-grid dairy. There's not a grid connection at all. We've got 100 kilowatts of panels on the roof. We've got 128 kilowatt hours of battery storage, and we have a diesel genset to back us up there, which would have been part of the picture nonetheless. What I want to say is that for us, this has certainly been a great opportunity to invest in green energy. I hope that it's something which will stand our business in a good position moving forward. I don't know if carbon neutral is something which we will be able to trade on in the future. I don't even know if we're carbon neutral, but I know we've got a lot of trees and we don't use much fossil fuel. So I'd endeavour to say we'd be in a pretty good place. So look, I think it's a trend which will serve us well, and certainly given our project and greenfield nature, it was feasible. Look, I want to move on and wrap up, mindful of time here. Some key observations. I think we need to understand the process here, and this is what's applicable to everyone. You need to know your business. You need to know it internally in terms of your strengths and weakness. You need to be a master of your production system, and Justin Walsh yesterday is a great example of someone who's mastered it, and it turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I think it's also important to understand the external environment in terms of your opportunities and threats as a business, and what stands you apart with your competitive advantage. Everyone needs a process for evaluating new ideas. There's not a business in New South Wales that wouldn't benefit from new ideas. I guarantee you that. It's about how we validate and evaluate those ideas, and creating a process which puts some rigor around those, both technically but also financially. It's crucial. The tools are out there, use them. I think we need to understand the future of our business. What is our strategy and how do we plan to execute, and how does that fit with the trends which will influence agribusinesses of the future? Some closing remarks finally to wrap up, and I hope I'm close to on time. I think the opportunities are immense here. You know, certainly I'm excited about the future, and I know the people I work with are. We're going to need innovation in production systems. There's always opportunities to achieve a better cost of production. The way that we grow as agribusinesses and acquire capital will be innovated as we move forward. How we approach animal well-being, how we communicate this with our consumers, and how we do the best possible job of being the ones responsible for the animals which give us our livelihood will be crucial. Environmental stewardship and waste management, it goes without saying, but these will be trends that will continue into the future. I want to wrap up there and say thank you to the businesses that have allowed me to speak about what they do today, and open it up to any questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you to all presenters in this final session of the symposium. We still have a good amount of time for some discussion on this. I've got quite a few questions here, but I'm going to actually come back to what's actually been already questioned on the Q&A, and it takes us back to the first presentation of this session. So to you, Sabrina, from Jeremy's Gears, have you done panting work in dairy or just feedlot? If so, how does milk yield relate to panting?
Thanks for your question, Jeremy. And I noticed that John's also asked a question on panting as well. So I'll answer both of them because it's quite related. What we did in the feedlot, so we have only done this work in feedlot, but there is work that has been done by Allflex or SCR in Israel in dairy. What we focus our observations on is respiration rate via visually observed panting. So we use the Goggin panting scale, which is kind of the industry gold standard in the feedlot industry for panting. It's a scale that ranges from 0 to 4. In terms of milk yield, there has been work done in this space. We haven't done it, but it is something that I think is important to look at into the future. In terms of respiration rate for classifying panting, the Goggin scale, and I can type it into the answers, we're able to detect panting right down to a score of 1, which is closed mouth respiration, where you start to see the animal sort of heaving front to back, and an increase in respiration rate through the abdomen. And we in the graph that I presented, we were really only seeing panting scores of around 1 and 2, so they are quite sensitive to detecting panting.
Thank you, Sabrina. To you, there's a question also here to you, Nick, around production of biogas, and whether it's only done for effluent or also from other waste materials in Australia, so opening up that opportunity for other materials.
Certainly on dairies, the main focus has been on utilising the effluent stream coming from the dairy, but certainly other waste streams can be used for biogas production. The other interesting angle on this is actually growing energy crops. So if you don't have enough material from your dairy, you could actually grow crops and put through your digester as well. So there is some work being carried out on that, but it's very hard to get hard numbers on whether it's worth it or not.
Staying with you, Nick, there's another question that's come through around that payback on photovoltaics, and from your slide there was a 5 to 9, a range between 5 and 9 years payback. Do you have any inkling as to why that range is there? You might have touched on it, but the range, obviously 5 is attractive, and perhaps 9 not so. What was driving that variability?
It comes back down to what the costs of any upgrades you need to make. So some farms perhaps already had a lot of the equipment that fitted into that template for thermal storage. So they might have, the compressor and the chiller might have already been suitable to adapt to a thermal storage type system. So their upgrade costs could have been a bit lower, rather than if someone had to put the whole system in, new compressors, new refrigeration gear, then the costs are going to be higher. So there is always that range of, so there's the cost of equipment, but coming back to also there's the cost of what they're currently paying for power. And surprising as it might be, most farmers are not paying the same for power. So if we go to 10 farms, everyone's got a different rate. And so there will be that's part of the equation as well. So if some farmers are paying more for power now, their potential savings are higher.
Just a question for me on that one, Nick. I've done my own sums and shopped around a little bit with the energy providers, and there seems to be a big difference between energy providers in the feed-in tariffs, the amount that you can get paid for solar as well. Is that something that farmers should be considering as well, shopping around for a good price on the...
Yeah, so look, you can, the default is about 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour for feed-in, but you can get 18 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour for feed-in. But you do need to be careful because they might sting you on the other end. So their actual rates that they charge you for power, particularly peak and shoulder power, could be higher. So even though you're getting better feed-in tariff, you might be paying for it in the other power you actually use. So a big feed-in tariff might suit a residential house which has got a huge solar system and not using much power. So they can afford to offset some slight increases in energy costs from the slightly higher rates, but they're feeding in so much at a higher tariff, it offsets those increases. But for a dairy where there are reasonable energy costs, it's very hard to offset to the same extent. On that feed-in tariff, I mean, talking to retailers, we're actually in a bit of a bubble at the moment on, feed-in tariffs are actually reasonable. And if you talk, some retailers are saying if the spot price for feed-in tariff is sometimes negative. And so that means if you're actually paying for feeding in solar tariffs. So rather than being paid, there is a possibility down the track, and you might have seen on the news recently where people would actually have to pay for the privilege of feeding in tariffs. So feeding tariffs, so I think the message is it's better to use it if you can, because you're offsetting 30 cents per kilowatt hour rather than gaining up to 10, 15 cents a kilowatt hour.
Thanks, Nick. And to you, Andrew, I noticed on your slide that when you were describing AFMH, number one on that slide was people. And I think that might have been purposely so. The theme of this session is innovation. You mentioned there, you've got a team of five vets or so on board, and I'm assuming there's a huge team around that. I'm sure there's some innovative practices going on there around keeping that team well engaged, on track and happy. Can you describe, how you do that, Andrew, as a company?
Yeah, Cameron, it's a cracking question. And I think that the answer is so wide, I could give another 20 minutes on it. I think ultimately it's about communicating and it's about sharing your values here. One of the quick examples on innovation that I'll give is that I can't see a reason why every dairy farm doesn't use WhatsApp to communicate with its staff. We have dozens of WhatsApp groups for our different teams. What it does is it gives a medium for anyone at any time to share information, to ask questions, and ultimately it overcomes a lot of time waste and confusion. We're on the same page. We're connected 24/7. So don't get me wrong, on a Saturday night that can be a worse nightmare. But look, it's endless. It's endless. We're certainly a team over 300 people now. The way that we communicate is ever important. The way that we share our vision and buy into it together is, ultimately what sees the business succeed. So I'd love to give another 20 minutes on it, Cameron, but probably mindful of time.
Maybe the topic for another presentation there, Andrew, but I understand just knowing where the business is going is a key one there, having that vision in mind, maybe. is a key first step when your employees first set foot on the farm. A question, I've just got a question for each of you. So this is open to anyone to answer here. If you had a magic wand and could implement one piece of innovation to all New South Wales dairy farms today, right now, what would it be? Anyone?
I'll have first swing. For me, this is absolutely about having a way to evaluate new ideas. I think we have a huge amount of information flowing into us as dairy farmers, and the volume of data and information around us is enormous. The way that we evaluate new ideas and determine what's going to be part of our future, for me, if I could create a system that'd do that for me, it'd be excellent. I think in terms of technology here and now that I'd use, herd management software is right up there for me. I think that's the crux of everything. So,
yeah, I'd like to add to that. I mean, I think, like, being part of this DPI project, we've had the luxury of employing consultants to do feasibility studies. So looking at, you know, particular bits of equipment and rigorously analysing, is it worth it? Farmers don't have that luxury. So being able to, and you have to sort of sift through all the sales speak from people trying to sell you something. So being able to, like Andrew says, have a system or facility to be able to understand and sift through all the information coming through would be really useful to make good decisions.
I don't have much to add, except that I think it's really important to evaluate what you want from technology, if that's the innovation that you're pursuing as a farmer. But I also think that there's, just to add to what Nick was saying, there's a place for consultants in this space, because we do have so many different types of technology becoming available. And as Andrew was saying, you know, how do you evaluate what kind of technologies to choose and to work? We need data integration. And through that, I think that there is a role for a third party to play in that, to help producers choose the right types of technology that will benefit their business, and look at the cost benefit as well.
Thank you. Yes, and there's another question here around transparency. We had a whole session that you chaired yesterday, Sabrina, on transparency, but linking that in with, perhaps you're the best one to answer this one, Sab, around animal monitoring as well. So linking transparency and animal monitoring together in objective ways, is that something that is going to be important for future farms potentially?
Yeah, I mean, personally, my opinion is yes. I think that was really clear from the talks that we heard yesterday in the society session. Transparency is really important. I think there is a lot of risk with it, but I think in turn there are a lot of benefits. To achieve transparency, we need to be accessing a range of different technologies, as well as social media or other ways of communicating what we're doing on farm. So I think technology has a huge role to play here, particularly with individual animal monitoring, to demonstrate what is happening on farm, to produce those key performance indicators that allow for benchmarking of practices within your own business, as well as across industry, nationally and even internationally. So yeah, I think the only way we're going to move towards a sort of an industry-wide approach to transparency and benchmarking is through the use and the incorporation of these kinds of technologies.
Andrew, Nick, did you want to comment on that? I had a couple more questions just to skip through. We've only got about 1 more minute here.
Not really, no.
Okay, no, that's no worries as well. And it stays on the same theme around data collected on farm. And, you know, you mentioned there, this is to you, Andrew, and also, if you like, Nick, around data collection, the data graveyard that's potentially on our dairy farms. And Andrew, I'm assuming you collect a lot of data on your farm. And you mentioned there, I love the quote around innovation is executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value. Just some comments around technology acquisition, data generation, and how that's handled on your farms.
Yeah, it's a great question, Cameron. We certainly capture an enormous amount of information intrinsically. You know, we've got sensors on feeding and parlour, as well as on each of our animals in our facilities. So our capture is enormous in, you know, passively. How we use that information and turning that into forward-looking information is really the question that we're addressing at the moment. Excuse me. I think what we find is that the providers are all involved in their own technology, and none are particularly involved in linking it and creating intelligence or insight from that information. So the question is out there is who and how will they do that? That's the space that we're looking at the moment. But anywhere where we can predict and link our physical data capture to forward-looking financial performance, you know, I think that's really the space of opportunity at the moment.
Thank you so much, Andrew, Sabrina, and Nick. There's a few thank yous you'll see on the chat there, Q&A. Please have a look at those, and I'm sure that would be echoed by the other participants on this session. So thank you so much. It's now 11:56. I'm running slightly over time, but now, you know, on behalf of everyone listening to you today, thank you so much, Sabrina, Nick, and Andrew. And I'll hand it over to you, Yanni.
Thanks very much, Cameron. Thanks for all the speakers. This fantastic session. I will now have invited Nico to come back again and announce the winners.
So thank you again, all the emerging scientists, for your presentation. Thank you also to the people that did the judging for us around the competition. And as we said at the beginning, this session was sponsored by Local Land Services, Hunter, and there's going to be 3 prizes. The first one for the best abstract that was presented to participate in this competition goes to Laura Field from the University of Melbourne on the topic of the Babysitters Club, can calves benefit from spending time with older animals? So congratulations, Laura. She wins $500 for that prize. The second prize is also for $500 for the best promo video that was published on the Facebook page. And that prize goes to Juan Ignacio Gargiulo from the University of Sydney on his presentation, Ways to Increase Profitability in Robotic Milking. So congratulations, Juan, there too. And the last prize is for the best presentation for a total of $1,000. And that prize goes to Megan Connolly from the University of Wisconsin-Madison on a presentation, Influence of Prepartum DCAD and the Decline of Calcium at the Onset of Lactation. So congratulations to the 3 of you and to the rest of the participants.
Thanks very much, Nico, and congratulations, my congratulations as well for all the students. It has been fantastic presentations. So we are getting really to the close of this symposium. I think it's been 2 fantastic days. I really won't take much of your time now we're getting to the end, but just to say that we're getting a lot of messages, I suppose, from the 2 days and the sessions that we've been enjoying with all the fantastic speakers in this symposium. And I think that, to me, the highlights are really that as Andrew actually put it in, the opportunity to be on the right foot is becoming very, very evident with all the talks that we've been and the discussion we've been having over the 2 days. The fact that engagement is a key for actually getting closer to consumer needs and that socializing, as we saw yesterday. The science, as we saw this morning, as a way to develop the potential solution for tomorrow. And who would have said that there was a lot to be gained still in milking management, what and most of us probably thought that it was all being known already. And we saw a lot of examples from our emerging scientists in terms of the beautiful science and questions and hypotheses that are being tested across a lot of different areas like nutrition, behavior, robotic milking, etc., etc. And I think finally now the fact that we have the innovations really to actually convert those potential solutions from science or develop from science into real application on farm. And innovations really doesn't need to be a very like a complex things to be applied on farm. I mean, as Andrew again put it just now, a WhatsApp group can be a good innovation with a real gain on farm productivity. But I think above all, as our real general title for the symposium was business above all, the managing and being in control of your business is absolutely paramount. And I think, I hope that this symposium really brought together a lot of opportunities for you to do that. So I really, with that, I would like to finish. Thanks again, our sponsors, Dairy News Local and Services, the Sydney Institute of Agriculture, Dairy New South Wales, and New South Wales Farmers Association. All our speakers and facilitators have been absolutely fantastic. And our organizing committee, and in particular Lynn Garner, who, as I said before, was absolutely outstanding in her work behind the scenes to put this together for you to enjoy. So with that, in this very, very challenging year, as I said at the beginning, I have nothing more to say than just stay safe, stay in touch, and goodbye. Thank you.